I've been in professional football a long time, over 30 years. So I played a bit, but then I coached. I coached at Manchester City before they had any money, and at Portsmouth, who've never had any money. And I enjoyed my coaching. And then I went into management. Initially, I managed non-league teams, and then I went to up to managing professional teams like Cheltenham Town and others. But then about 15 years ago, perhaps 16 years ago, I made the step across to recruitment, to scouting. I'd always enjoyed identifying talent. I started doing scouting, and then I had nearly 12 years at Chelsea in the academy in various roles within the academy recruitment department, running teams of scouts, training scouts, and running different filter programs that we did, trialist programs, everything really. And I really enjoyed that. A fantastic academy, of course, at Chelsea, one of the best in the world, as you know, and really enjoyable. But it got to the point where I felt it was time for a new challenge. I wanted to do two things. So one was to start our business, the scouting game, where we assess players from all around the world by video. And we have a team of people that do that now. But then I also moved to Southampton, where I'm now head of academy recruitment. And I'm really enjoying that. A very different challenge than at Chelsea, different circumstances, but really good fun. A very good club to work with. Very exciting times for us as we're trying to build something new there. So that's my path of 30 years, I suppose, through coaching, management, and then into scouting. So yesterday, for example, I was in a training ground. I'm in the training ground 3 or 4 days a week. So I had a succession of meetings, a team meeting. As you say, I manage a team. So I had meetings with some of the coordinators who work with me, who in turn manage scouts, and we were talking about targets, talking about practical organizational things. And then I had other meetings during the day about players that we're trying to find. I met with our director, talking about one or two players, one that we decided not to go for now, and another that we decided that we should focus in more. So player focus stuff, looking at our age groups and what we need, discussing with the director, but also the coaches where we think we will need players next season in different ages. So planning ahead so that I can pass that information on to our scouting teams. This is what we're looking for at this age. We think we need this at this age, and so on. Then last night I was at our main centre at the training ground. We have one of our assessment centres, which you would recognise as exactly the same structure as the IRP system we used to run at Chelsea. I've set that up at Southampton. We have three centres that do this, where our grassroots scout can send players in for age 9s to 14s at the one at the training ground, and we can assess them over 6 weeks to see whether they're ready for a formal trial. It's quite a new structure that I've set up at Southampton, so I just wanted to make sure everything was running well last night, and there were some good players there, so that was exciting. That's progressing well. So a long day, and now today, as in contrast in a way, I'm working from home, so I have lots of reports to do for my own scouting. Every scout, has to write the reports of games they go to, me included. That's our product. That's what we produce. So I have reports to catch up on, and various organisational things. We've restructured our recruitment department at Southampton, and so progressing that normal sort of organisational things, management things, and then I'll go to a game tonight where we're looking for a left back to play in our under 21s next season and the season after. So I've got a target list that the team have produced and our data services have produced. So I'm going to tick one of those players off the list tonight. So ranging from management stuff and organizational requirements, managing people, and then scouting, including going to games and reporting on players. Yes. I have this sort of a theory or a standard that I don't want to recommend to the club a player to sign, certainly not a senior, let's say someone over 14 up to 21, so in the older ages that we cover, unless I've seen them myself. Now that might be on video. It's not always possible to see them live. But ideally it's live. So I just want to have that confidence in the process. So we have a whole filter process where scouts, video scouts to start with, identifying players, and national scouts, as we call them, go out and watch them. The lead scouts will then assess, and then eventually they come to me and say, right, Chris, this player or these couple of players we think are good enough for us to consider signing. And then at that point, I like to see them myself, live or on video, so that I can, when I'm presenting to the director and presenting to the board, particularly if it's a player we've got to spend money on, but even if there's not a transfer fee, it's still a commitment to a player. You know, you're signing someone for 2 or 3 years, whatever it might be, or offering them a scholar, you know, from 16 upwards. It's a big commitment from the club. So I feel that I should be able to say, I have seen this player. It's going out and watching the games is the fun part. That's the great thing, isn't it? We get paid to watch games, don't we?
Yeah.
And all the other stuff around it, the writing reports, very important. And then for management stuff, managing people with all the issues that comes up anywhere, all that is not so much fun as going out and watching games. Yes, it's changed so much, even over, let's say, the last 5 years since COVID. I think that accelerated the change, you know, where everyone was having to work more remotely. So video scouting is there now. I mean, 95% of first team scouting in England is done by video. So when Brighton are going to sign Moises Caicedo, you know, from Ecuador, first division, they did it entirely on video, and that's not unusual. But so the game has changed. Video scouting is there. So the way that I'm approaching things at Southampton is that the initial scanning of teams is done by video scouts. So that requires us to get more and more video available. So that's been a challenge. We've recently signed up to a video platform that is going to provide us with a lot of video. We reach agreements with clubs where we exchange videos, reciprocal agreement. So we're gradually getting more and more video access. And with video access, particularly at the younger ages, you need to get team sheets, because it's not like if you're watching one of the professional games on services like Scout or Instat, you can easily find out who those players are. But when you're watching an under 13 or under 14 team, as you know, you don't know often who they are. And to report on them by video and without a team sheet, it is not efficient. So we are always looking, hence signing up to one of the video platforms recently, to get more and more video. And then the principle is video scouts are watching, scanning, identifying players of interest, target ages, target positions. Then our national scouts will go and watch them physically and watch them on video. And so all the way through, the video element is there. You know, when the lead scout in the north was speaking to me yesterday and said, "Oh, look, I saw this player over the weekend, or one of his team did. I really like him," you know. So I said, okay, let's get our analyst to get what video we've got on him and do some clips for me, get the analysts working to provide information. So all the way up the line. And then indeed, when I do a presentation to the director and through them to the board, it's a video presentation at that point. You know, you're saying, we've seen this player X number of times. This is what they're good at. This is what they can do for us, why they're better or different from what we have. And you're presenting with video. So all the way up the process, all the way up now, video is a key part of it. And that's changed dramatically, certainly in my career, but it's accelerated that change in the last 5 years.
Mm.
And the other thing is there was very little video coverage about, you know. Obviously, when I started scouting, no one used video. The technology to be able to clip videos, even if you had a full match video, was in its infancy. You know, it wasn't being used. It wasn't, and it was very expensive when it first came out. The more cost-effective software to be able to manipulate and clip them, which has got so much easier, it's enabled us to use it in a different way. And then, as I say, COVID and lockdown, when we couldn't get out to games, that was an extra push then. So you have a whole generation of scouts here in the UK, certainly, who grew up not using video and who are not comfortable with watching video as a way of identifying players. Now, we know that it is always best to see a player live. That is the preference. You see what they're doing when the ball's down the other end of the pitch. You know, you're not dependent on the video system tracking the player and the ball. And you can pick up a lot more. But it's just not cost effective to do it on a wide scale. When Brighton, again, when they switched to using video scouting for first team as the primary tool, as opposed to physical scouting, they saved £2 million a year in cost. So just on that alone, you know, the cost effectiveness, I could sit here at home today and I could watch, I don't know how many games, 6 or 7 games today from anywhere. And yet to go out and watch those players live would take me weeks to do. It just doesn't add up. So it's not as good as the first choice of seeing a player live. Not as enjoyable, too, I must say. But it is cost effective and it is a much more efficient use of resources and allow us to scan a lot further. Last week, last Wednesday evening, our director took a group of 10 of us out for dinner as a thank you for the work that was done in the transfer window that finished at the end of August, where we in the academy, we signed 4 players at the end of the process. And when I was looking around the room in the restaurant, you know, at the 10, who the 10 people were, it was really interesting. It shows what a multidisciplinary approach you have to have. So I was there from the recruitment department. We had 2 of the senior coaches from our 21s who had been involved in giving opinions on players. We had our operations people and our registrations people who like me, worked, and all of us worked till midnight, you know, on transfer deadline day, actually registering players and getting information. We had our head of medical there, because you get a player in, you've got to do a medical on them on the day. We had 3 of our drivers there who drive players around, because on that day, shifting players and agents around, picking them up at stations or the airport, bringing them into our training ground, taking them to hotels, absolutely key. They played their part. We had another member of my team whose job is to liaise with trialists and to liaise with people coming in, and he was the one who was just looking after everybody, making sure because there's a lot of waiting around on transfer deadline day. And then the director and me. Oh, and we had the player care person, because we had to have the player care team talking to the players who come in about where they might live and all these arrangements that can be made for them. So that shows you, just on that dinner last week, just reflect, you know, as a celebration of a successful transfer window, all the different people that were involved, and all of us had worked till midnight. I got home on transfer deadline day 2 o'clock in the morning, and it'd been a long day. That shows you how to be effective, you have to have all of these elements. You need to depend on lots of different people. We could have had other people there as well, our media people, because when you sign a player, you want photographs. You've got to go on the website. You've got to, you know, communicate the information. We could have had our catering people, because all during that day when people are there, you've got to keep them fed and you've got to look after them. So we have people who do all those things like all the clubs do, but it just shows what a range of different tasks and disciplines are involved. Because you might think, oh, it's transfer deadline day. You got a scout, you got someone to register them, and that's it. Well, it's a big team that get involved, and that was in academy scouting, not first team scouting. So you got the same repeated again at first team stuff. Our director recognised that and said, let's take everybody out for dinner as a thank you. And so everybody from the drivers, everyone, all went out to dinner together. And that's, a smart move too, because it's a team effort. It's more common that we start with data. So we have different data services. So, for example, the game I'm going to tonight, I mentioned, is a non-league game because we're looking to sign some of our under-21s. So we start with a data service that we contract to who provide data on young players who are playing at the top levels in non-league, position by position. So I could yesterday just say to our recruitment analyst, can you go on that system, that database, get me a list of the top 10 young left backs playing at top levels of non-league. And that gives us a hit list straight away. So then we will get scouts to go out and see those, depending where it is in the country. I sent that list to our lead scout in the north, lead scout in the south. And I said, look, I'll personally look at these guys. There's 3 or 4 on the list because they're quite near where I live. Can you sort the others out? Let's get eyes on these. That's a data-driven process then. So other than that, in our normal process, as I mentioned before, we start off, or we're trying to get more, starting off with video scouting. So again, you need access to videos, as I mentioned. The video scouts identify players of interest, priority ages, positions. Then our scouts will start going out, our national scouts. And this is looking at it on a national basis. We have a similar locally for grassroots football within an hour and a half of us in our catchment area. But it's a filter process in the same sort of way. Players that the scouts see they like, they put their reports on the system, our scout information system. That produces top depth charts, whatever age. These are the top rated players by our scouts. Our lead scouts will get that information. And we have weekly meetings at which they'll be saying to me and the national coordinator, well, according to our reports, if you're after a striker at under 16, these are the ones who are scoring high. Then we have to factor into that the knowledge or the intelligence around that, because the best one might be, let's say, at Chelsea. And then we think, well, realistically, are we going to be able to get that player out of Chelsea or Arsenal? If they do come out or are ready to leave, they would be hugely expensive. So we then have to apply the filters of our requirements, what positions, but also our budget, what's realistic. So consequently, I say to the video scouts right at the beginning, let's start with the lower category academies. Because if we do find players there, we've got more chance of being able to sign them down the line. So your intelligence or your context that you require enables you to focus the data right at the beginning, and that helps your filtering. And then you get to the point where you've got a short list. We'll get a short list, hopefully, of left backs that I'm looking at or that we're prioritizing at the moment. And then we will decide, okay, which is the one is best. We'll start making inquiries of their clubs or their agents, whatever it might be. Are they interested in coming? How much are they on now? What do they want? And all that leads up then to a presentation, which is a pack of information with video and other information brought together, which in, let's say, 5 minutes will summarize that player for the board, the ownership, who would never have seen the player. This is where we're spending money on them. Lower than that, I can make the decisions on whether we sign them or not. But if let's assume it's someone that we have to spend a significant amount of money on, all your product is that whole system with data, scouts, video, live. It is a 5-minute video in which you are selling the idea of that player to the owners. And so you've got to find, we're always looking to find ways how we can make that 5 minutes most effective, paint the best picture. And the owners, they're going to want to know, well, how will this player fit in with the other ones that we've got at those ages or the ages below? So you've got to look at where a player fits in, how they compare. All this information has to be presented. Now, if by that point we've managed to get, for example, the under-21 manager and coaches, they're on board, they like the player. If there's significant money involved, then we would also get our first team manager on board. Because when it comes to the board decision, if they know that everybody on the coaching side, right through to the first team manager, saying, yeah, we like this player, we could see them making an impact for us, then that obviously strengthens your case. So you move from a data management issue to a football issue of analysing and assessing a player. And then you sort of move to a selling, marketing part of your job. Now, you get some scouts who are very good at the bit in the middle, the assessing a player. Yep. But they might not be comfortable with using the data or watching videos. And they might not be able to manage people to do that. And similarly, they might not be good at the end result, the selling point. So to step up from being a scout to into a management role, you need to show it's not just about your eye, as we say, your assessment ability. It becomes increasingly about your ability to use information and manipulate information and data, and to be comfortable with that, even if there are other analysts who do the prime task. And then ultimately, how to showcase your products, which is your opinions and the opinions of the team. Those skills are different skills to being able to assess a player. But they're the skills that people need if they want to be head of academy recruitment, senior scouts, or however the club is structured, you know. Chelsea is not representative. In football, probably in every country, and certainly in the UK, you have a league table or a food chain, depending how you want to describe it. And at the top, you have the clubs with most money and resources. So Chelsea, Manchester City, Arsenal, Manchester United in England, for example. And then you work your way down to the Category 3 academies, the smallest academies. Now, it varies hugely how many people are working and how big those teams are. So if we were talking about Portsmouth, club I used to work at, and I know well, I've got a big soft spot for, their Category 3, lowest category academy that does all ages, they'll have nothing like those sort of resources. They might have 3 or 4 scouts. So that process is going to be different if you're at a small club. Very different. It's going to feel very different. Working the way up to Southampton, where I am now, which is a Category 1 Premier League club, towards the top of that table, if you like, or that food chain. But even so, it's significantly smaller than those who are at the right at the top. So there's a huge range of capacity of scouts, analysts, all those support services that I mentioned before. They're going to vary hugely. Now, often for a scout, actually, to start at a smaller academy can be really good. Lots of different parts of that process. So you can gain a lot more experience at a smaller club, actually, because you're required to do more. Whereas when you go into the bigger clubs, it's great resources and facilities and players, but you might just do a smaller range of activity. Southampton, we have something like 60 scouts in all doing national. That's not counting international, because as we're part of a group, the international work tends to get picked up by the ownership group, Sport Republic. And that we're fairly normal in size for the category one, the bigger academies, but not as big as the real, the Man Cities and the Chelseas and so on. Will have more of everything where that's concerned.
Really?
So you've got the local ones who are out every week on the parks, looking at local football, particularly younger players. And then you've got the national ones that are spread around the country, looking at players mostly who play for other academies. Because there's such a variety of people doing scouting who come from a variety of different pathways into scouting. People may have played, they may have coached and managed like I did, and then go into scouting. Others now coming in a much younger age, like yourself, and they may have a background, perhaps in degrees in sports science, one sort and another route. But I think all of the scouts have a necessity to show that they understand the game, that they can pick out a player. I said before that if you and I went together to watch the game tonight that I'm going to, you would pick out the best players and the worst players in the first 5 minutes, as we all would. And most people can do that, The challenge for scouts is all of those players who are in the middle, who are not the best ones, the stars of the game, and they're not the worst ones. You think, no, they're nowhere near it. It's identifying those who might not be having a great game. They might be struggling. Their team might be getting beat, or they might be having a really easy game and their team is hammering the other side. Either way, they might not be challenged and showing all of their play. And the good scouts are able to see elements in their performance that are translatable. So usually you're watching players at one level and you're assessing them to go to another level. It might be you're watching a player at 15 and you're wondering what would they be like at 18. You're looking to translate the player and guess and forecast what they might be. If we took that player out of this club and put them in our club, what would they be like? So it's being able to imagine that translation of a player out of that game that you're watching into whatever the setting is that you're recruiting for. That is the skill, I think. So the basic, can they control the ball? Can they pass the ball? Can they move? And control, pass, and move is the basis of football, one way or another. Those three things. Most scouts can assess those and have their opinions. But it's identifying what are the elements of their game that would translate. In order to do that, you really need to know the level that you are recruiting to. It may sound an obvious thing to say, but scouts, when they join a club, they always think, I want to go out and find players, which is great, lovely. But I always say to them, look, the first few weeks at least, come and watch the teams that you're recruiting to. Because unless you know that standard, that player, that you can't recruit to it. You've got to know what it is you want to translate them into before you can identify what they translate. So then as managers of scouting teams, we have to make sure that that is possible for them to come in. They might live a long way away. There might be a national scout 300-400 miles away. So therefore we have to make videos available of the team on our internal platform so that they can watch them by video. One way or another, they've got to know the standards to be able to say. So if you came to me with a player and he was 15 and you say, Chris, I think this player's really good, I would say to you, okay, who is he better than in our 15s? And if you say, well, I think he's better or different than that player or that one, we can have a good discussion. If you say, well, I don't know our 15s, and I say, well, how can you recruit someone into them if you don't know what they're like? So you're looking for scouts that have the knowledge and can make those assessments, those forecasts about change, but they're also ready to do the work in learning about our age groups, putting in the hours to watch it on video. And so you're looking for an attitude, a willingness to work. I'm enjoying it. I mean, I wouldn't be doing it if I didn't enjoy it, I suppose, you know, and it is that thrill of going, like, you know this, you can even go to a game tonight, you never know what you're going to see, you know, what you're going to see, you know, and that buzz is still there. And whilst that buzz is there, I've always, you know, wanted to go on to the next game and find the next player.